You talked a little bit about, how you would see a lot of guys lose in the same way and they kind of wouldn't change anything. And I feel like you're a guy who has kind of changed somewhat drastically in the last few years, mainly when it comes to the like drilling versus ecological side of things, because originally you were known as one of the big drilling type of guys, and now you're kind of, at least what it seems like, all in on the ecological stuff. So what led you to that shift in like your approach to training and everything?
I was saying, Johnny, that I used to go to Marcelo's, and then in between classes, I would just film you drilling for like 2 hours in between classes and stuff. So
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
so dialed in on the drilling aspect of things. I feel like more than anybody else.
Oh, for sure. So I definitely took a complete 180, but also it just came with like getting older, having more responsibilities, not wanting to spend 8 hours a day on the mat. I do feel like, first of all, just from a time perspective, ecological approach is better because you're more efficient with your time. And also, like, after a while, like, you just need to find different ways to learn. I'm not gonna be that eco guy that's gonna bash drilling because I did it for so long and I think I was able to make it work for myself. But being introduced to eco and to CLA, I do find myself learning in different ways and being just as productive. And actually, let me say that right, being more productive with my time. Um, for example, like, and I always just kind of tell people this as like a reference, like my stand up has always been kind of mid throughout my career. And I remember I was just going to my buddy Kivon's gym at Bodega, and we're working on like a game just starting from an underhook from the feet. And the goal was to only find ways to get their hands or hips to the mat any way that you can. And I had zero idea on how to do that, but just working from that position for 10 minutes against live resistance, in that 10 minutes, I was able to find three, four, five ways on how to get their hands or hips to the mat. And then from there, that became a strength of mine just because I would keep working it against resisting opponents. Whereas I feel like drilling, when you're doing against someone that's not really fighting back or there's no resistance, I don't know if you really get the proper reactions. So one, I feel like it was very efficient with my time, and two, I felt like I was learning a lot faster than I usually would through drilling.
Mm.
What was your first kind of introduction to eco? Was it like Bodega, or did you kind of come across it a different way? I guess, how did you get kind of introduced to it?
Yeah, so I do give full credit to Kiev there. He was the one that was looking. Greg Souders obviously was a he started following Greg Souders. He talked to him a lot, and then Kevon was bringing that over to me. And at first, I was very reluctant because I was so used to what I know. But he kind of was just like, he kind of just hammered it at me. He's like, Gianni, try this, try this. Let's give it a few weeks, give a few practices just to kind of get a feel for it. And just get rid of the drilling for a little bit. Let's just play these games that I've been working on, see how you feel, and we go from there. And I remember, like, after a few weeks, I just felt like I was learning a lot more. And also it was just way more fun too. To be honest, like I get tired of just like listening to guys talk, on why their technique works. Instead just give me something to do and let me figure it out on my own. Um, so it's just, I feel like it's, like I say, it's more efficient with the time. And also it's just, you're constantly doing live work. There's never any pausing for too long and just listening to the technique. You're just constantly working. Like there's an hour, 15-minute session at Bodega morning and night. And for like 75, 80-minute class, we're working for about 65 minutes, of live work, almost each practice, so there's very little breaks and there's very little sitting and listening. It's just constant, like, figuring it out on your own.
What's the other like 10 minutes or so?
Well, the coaches will explain like what the constraints are, what the goals are in each game. But it's pretty short. So you don't have to listen to instruction for too long, but it always makes sense. And I even watch the white belts and the people who are very new, and they're picking it up as well. First, I'm thinking, oh, am I just picking it up because I've been around for so long? But it even goes back to the day one guys as well.
Hmm.
They're able to figure it out as well. Maybe Kevon has to give them a little bit of a longer explanation,
Yeah.
kind of scale it a little bit, of course, give them different tasks, give them more constraints. But white belt to black belt can be in those practices and still find it just as productive, for anyone at any level.
And so just like on like a larger scale jiu-jitsu meta, obviously there's a lot of debate on on drilling and eco, and like, is this the direction you think that jiu-jitsu should be going? Just kind of like on a larger, more global scale, going more towards eco and away from drilling.
You know what? Like anyone can do anything that they want. I don't like to. You guys could do whatever you want. There's a lot of successful people that drill. Look at AOJ. AOJ is filled with high level talent, and they drill a lot. Atos, they drill a lot. So I think it's different strokes for different folks, or whatever you want to say. I don't want to be the guy who knocks drilling, because, like I said, I did it for so long and I feel like I was successful with it. I do find it to be the better approach. But if you're gonna successful with something else, all the power to you. Do what you want, and if it works for you, great. But I've been doing it for like the last year and a half, 2 years. I find it to be really working. It's a lot of fun, and I'll go with that. But anyone could do anything that they want. I don't like the whole like. I think the debate gets a little too crazy, to be honest. And if someone's successful with something else, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean I guess that's the nature of like debating any topic, right? People like double down and want it to be very finite. Like it's like, no, you have to do this or you have to do that, or it's wrong or it's right. But it is, probably a hybrid approach to most things in life. A balanced approach is probably better, So there's a little bit of something for the people. Go out there and, find your balance and live a better life.
Find what works for you. Just find what works for you. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I've been working on like more of a like, instead of ecological or drilling, I've been trying to play around with like a theological or like a philosophical approach, where I mainly like pray on jiu-jitsu, or I like just sit and think about it and then see if I can improve that way without actually doing it. So far, it's not going well.
I mean, at least you're trying something. Maybe it'll click at some point. Who knows? Keep that in.
Yeah. It's the only option you have when you're on the road a lot and videos all day. You don't get to train sometimes.
I mean, it does kind of help for sure.
Yeah, but
like visualizing. I mean, not to take your semi joke into seriousness, but like doing visualization work. Of course, you need to be on the mats. That's super important. But also, if you're hurt or something and you can't train, spending time watching videos, spending time just kind of being in your own thoughts, like seeing out like certain situations in your head. When I do get back to training, and if I'm away for a little bit, I do see that helping as well. Like I used to do visualization work all the time, just kind of like mind mapping how I want to approach any situation. And so I definitely see how that can work. I don't know if you'll get to a high level just doing that, but there's definitely the benefits.
Well, I'm just trying to beat this guy Steve at my gym. He's a brown belt dude, real pain in the ass. So as long as I get there,
that's all that matters.
Yeah. I'm just kidding.